Hey folks, welcome back to another video. Today, let's talk a little bit about some books that I would like to recommend for fall. I know it's almost the end of October when this video is going up, but to be honest, it's been a pretty warm fall so far. And I don't know about you, but I am not in the fall mood when it's warm outside, right? Trees are not even changing color yet in Ontario, where I am in Canada. So it's a bit late, but is it really late? I don't think so. And we also have all of November for the fall vibe. So let's talk about some books that I have read, some that I'm also planning on reading this season that I would recommend for the fall season. Okay, so I have quite the extensive list, as always. And I think that there's something for everyone here in this video. Okay, so depending on if you like murder mysteries, if you like thrillers, if you like witchy stuff, fall books, like there's just so much. They have so much to offer. There's so many different themes and genres and specialties that fall books have. So I think there will be something for everyone in this video. Okay, first up, let's talk about psychological thrillers, and who else but the queen of psychological thrillers, Frida McFadden. Now, I'm a bit late to the Frida McFadden bandwagon. I recently got a Kindle a few months ago, and since then I got Kindle Unlimited membership, and there's like every single novel by Frida McFadden on Kindle Unlimited. So naturally, I have read most of them. Some of them I absolutely hated, but most of them I really loved. So let's start with maybe my top 3 books by Frida McFadden. All right, let me pull up my Goodreads here because I am not prepared for this video. Okay, so I'll say one of my top books by Frida McFadden has to be Never Lie. Now, this is a bit of an older one, I believe, and this is a classic sort of mystery involving a therapist, a psychiatrist who goes missing, spooky house, all of that. So if that's your vibe, I would pick this one up. This one I'm not going to say too much because that is my rule of thumb with all thrillers and murder mysteries. You go in knowing as little as you possibly can, because otherwise you just know too much and you're going to be able to predict it. Having said that, I have been able to predict the ending for most of Frida McFadden's books, not because they're predictable and bad, but I have just read so much thriller in my life that there's not much that, surprises me anymore. Still loved this book, particularly, even though it was a tad bit predictable. So Never Lie is about this one couple who goes in to see this house that has been sitting on the market for some time. The owner was a psychiatrist who disappeared a few years ago and has not been found since. They go there, there's a snowstorm, they're trapped in the house overnight, potentially for the weekend, and the main female character starts to go through the house to learn more about the psychiatrist who went missing and what really happened. That's all I'm going to say about it. It was very atmospheric, I will say, because there's a snowstorm, there's an empty house. Is it empty? But there's an empty house, there's a missing person, there's a lot of mystique around the psychiatrist and when and why she went missing. So I will say it was very atmospheric. It's set during an entire weekend, so it's certainly very fast paced. Obviously, you also have the missing psychiatrist perspective. So there's a bit of a time jump back and forth, but nothing that's bad. Very good. I gave this one about 4 stars. Okay, the next Frida McFadden that I really liked is her newest release that came out in October of this year, and that's called The Boyfriend. I ended up giving it 4 stars, spoiler alert, 4 stars out of 5. I enjoyed it. It was predictable, but I still enjoyed it. It's basically about this woman, our main character, Sydney Shaw, who's had very bad luck dating men. She can't seem to find, her Mr. Right. She's gone on a string of bad dates, and then she starts dating this seemingly perfect guy. But then there is this really brutal murder of a young woman, and there's a series of brutal murders of young women, mainly by people that they have been dating, or that's what's theorized anyway. And then she really starts to doubt the guy that she's dating. Is he as perfect as he seems? Is he somehow related to what's going on? Is she gonna be a victim? And she doesn't really feel entirely safe. Again, that's all I'm going to say about that. This one was interesting because you've got a ton of suspicious characters, you've got some good twists and turns, slightly predictable ending. I was a bit furious with this main character. She seemed a little bit too blind to things at times. Some things I felt like were staring her in the face and she could have just figured them out, but she didn't. But again, having said that, it was a quick read. It was really nice. I would recommend this one. And the last Frida McFadden book that I will recommend is The Coworker. This is, I believe, her book from last year or the year before it came out. It's not that old. And this one, I liked it particularly because it was a unique setting. So it's set in an office, not usually the type of setting that I have read about in murder mysteries or in thrillers. And it's around this like relationship between two coworkers. So you have dual perspective here. You have one perspective of this woman named Dawn. And then you have the perspective of Natalie, who is like the cool popular girl, and Dawn is the awkward one. The story starts off with the Dawn not showing up to work one morning, which is extremely shocking because she is this like super punctual, you know, this like type A personality, never missed a day of work in her life, and she's unreachable. And so Natalie takes it upon herself to kind of figure out what's going on, what's going wrong. This whole mystery revolves around these like office relationships, which was nice. It was a bit refreshing. Again, lots of twists and turns. What I like a lot about Frida McFadden's books is that they're so fast-paced. If you're in a reading slump, a Frida McFadden book is almost guaranteed to pull you out of it. So if you're just looking for like just something to quench that thirst of a good thriller that, you know, is a bit predictable but it's still like fast-paced, you still want to keep reading it, you can't put it down, pick up any Frida McFadden's thrillers. But these three are books that I have recently read by her and that I will say are quite good. Okay, next up are a couple books that I think fall under this like fun October read category. These are witchy themed, vampire themed books that are quite fun, actually. Not very spooky, nothing too serious, but they're very atmospheric, perfect for the fall season, and will put you a little bit in like the spooky vibes mood. And for that, my first recommendation is going to be the series My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine. This book came out last year in the fall, and I absolutely loved this book. This is probably the first vampire story I have picked up since Twilight when I was a teenager. And like most millennials, I have absolutely no idea why I was so obsessed with Twilight, but I promise you this is nothing like Twilight. It is actually good, and you're probably not going to regret liking this in like a couple of decades time. But this is a romance book between a human woman and a vampire. It's obviously a bit outlandish, it's funny, it's quirky, so you know, read it with a grain of salt. Don't go in expecting something super realistic. And I need to say that because people sometimes go into these types of books expecting realism, but you know. Okay, so this is about our main character, Cassie Greenberg. She is a struggling artist, you know, starving artist, that trope. She's looking for a place to stay, and she goes on Kijiji to find a place to stay because I think something's happening with her apartment, like she has to move out, and she can't afford much. So she sees a listing for a really nice apartment for really cheap. It's very suspiciously cheap. The ad is for a roommate. And she, you know, thinks it's a hoax, it can't be real, it's so cheap for such a nice place, but she just decides to entertain it, and she goes to see the space. And when she does, she meets our main character, Frederick Fitzwilliam. He has like an old-timey name as well. And he is a vampire, but she doesn't know that. So what happens is she sees the place, she likes it. He seems a bit quirky, and he seems to have a night job because he sleeps during the day and is only awake during the night. So she chalks it up to him having a night job, and she takes the apartment. And then when she starts living with him, she starts to notice how he's very old-fashioned in a lot of his mannerisms and how he speaks, and she starts to wonder if it's a job that's just keeping him up all night or if there's something else. This is a romance book that is a little spicy, so, you know, be cognizant of that going in. But it was fast-paced, it was fun, I really enjoyed it. The second one in the series just came out this fall. That one is called My Vampire Plus One, and that's around another female character, but the main character, the vampire, is friend of Frederick's. I will say the second one was not my favorite, maybe because just the idea didn't feel so novel anymore. It was already kind of done and it felt a bit of the same as before, but I still enjoyed it. I will say the first one is quite enjoyable. So if you're looking for like a fun vampire read, look at this one. Okay, next up, if you're looking for a witchy series, I really enjoyed The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. Erin Sterling is same woman as Rachel Hawkins, who writes a lot of popular thrillers, like you have The Wife Upstairs, and there were a couple more. But this is a romance novel, again set during the month of October in a small town where the main character is a witch and a family of witches. Again, this is a series. There's The Ex-Hex and there's The Kiss Curse, and the third one just came out, which I was a little bit too late to join the waiting queue at my library, but that one's called The Wedding Witch. Let's see how that one is. But The Ex-Hex is actually funny. I really enjoyed it. There's a couple major themes here. So a bit like enemies to lovers, but again, second chance romance, small town romance. So if you enjoy that kind of stuff, pick this one up. It's also very atmospheric. I don't remember how many stars I gave it, probably around 3.5, 4 stars, which is still quite good in my rating system. But this starts off with our main character, Viv. She is nursing a heartbreak, like 10 years ago, and she decides to put a hex on the guy that she had a bad date with, but just to kind of give him like a pimple or two, nothing like wild, but it ends up being something really horrible, and this guy is stuck with like bad luck, I think, for 10 years. Now fast forward 10 years, Viv returns to her small town and she has a run-in with this guy who's her ex, and this is where the enemies to lovers comes in. He's from the founding families, one of the major founding families of the town, so you've got this male character with a lot of authority and influence, and how he navigates this curse that she's put on him like 10 years ago. It was funny, it was fast-paced, I enjoyed it. I'm not really one for romances, but I had a good time with this one. Okay, now let's talk about cozy thrillers. This is another widely loved category of books during this time of the year. I personally love cozy thrillers. I think they're incredible. You just have to get the right one, because some of them are too cozy, not thriller enough, or the other way around. So one cozy thriller that I read very recently that I enjoyed was Nosy Neighbors by Freya Sampson. I absolutely love the cover, which I will be honest is the reason that I picked up this book, drew me to it. But one of the other things that drew me to it is an older female character. I believe she's an octogenarian, and she's a bit like curmudgeonly and like grumpy, and I really liked it. I really like that kind of main lead. But this is about Dorothy Darling, who is actually not an octogenarian. She is 77, so I guess almost. She's a 77-year-old woman who lives in the Shelley house. Now the Shelley house is this is set in England, somewhere small town in England, I believe. The Shelley house is a century house that has been used to be a manor, 100 years ago, and since then it's turned into this duplex sort of situation. So the house was kind of divided into 4 separate apartments, and so it's a bit of like a historical heritage home, and she's been living in there for a really, really long time. She's not really known as like the friendliest of neighbors. She's a bit curmudgeonly, she's a bit grumpy, we love that. And who moves in is somebody who's totally opposite in terms of personality, is a 25-year-old girl named Kat with like pink or purple hair, and automatically Dorothy doesn't like her. Now what happens is Shelley House, because it's so old, is facing demolition. So somebody wants to come in and buy it and turn it into like a block of condos, and the neighbors have to unite together to prevent the demolition from happening. And this is where a bit of the mystery comes in, and unlikely sleuths and unlikely friends is another trope that really shows up here, which I love. And Kat and Dorothy become these unlikely friends, and they band together to figure out what's going on. I unfortunately haven't heard many people talk about this. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a cute mix of found family aspect, really lovely, mysterious setting. I, for some reason, love reading anything set in the British countryside, especially during the month of October, November, like the fall season. There's just something so cozy about that. And again, I've absolutely loved the characters. All of the characters actually in the home were so unique, lovable, well, simultaneously lovable and frustrating. And that's a sign of good, I think, plot and character development, in my opinion. Okay, next up is another category of types of books that people like to read at this time, and that I like to call it a bit of like my Agatha Christie category. So books that read a bit like Agatha Christie, so they're convoluted, complicated mysteries. They're not like, you know, your Frida McFadden's where they're like quick and short sentences and very, very fast paced. These are a bit more complicated. They require a lot more brain energy to understand and work out, but they're like very much like your typical traditional mysteries when you think about them. So I know a lot of people enjoy that, so that's my next category. And there's so many to pick from in this category, so I will, you know, frustratingly maybe for you, I will only pick one series that I highly recommend, and that is The Murder of Mr. Wickham by Claudia Gray. I have talked about this book a lot. This is the first in a series. The third one I am currently reading. It's over there. It's called Perils of Lady Catherine de Bourgh. And like you may be able to tell from the title, this is a Jane Austen retelling. So 2 birds, 1 stone. If you like your classics during this time and you wish the classics just had a little bit more thriller in them, you would actually love this series. Claudia Gray is a literary genius. Like the way she has written these books is great. I love her writing style. I love her really, really strong grasp on the characters. You can tell that she is an Austen fan. But basically this series follows the son of Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. You have Jonathan Darcy, and then you have Miss Tilney. So in this world, basically, all Jane Austen's characters come together. So like they all know each other. Okay, so this book is with Emma and Mr. Knightley are throwing a house party, and they have involved everybody. They have invited everybody to come over. So you've got the Darcys, you've got like Mr. Wickham, you've got the Darcys, you've got the Knightleys, you've got Juliet Tilney, you've got Captain Wentworth, you've got everybody basically who's coming together for this house party, and Mr. Wickham gets murdered. So I'm not going to say more about it. It's just that it was so cool to see all of these characters, like Austen characters, brought back to life. It was fun, and then the series goes on. So what Claudia Gray seems to be doing is one by one in each book she's offing all of these villains or these characters from Austen original novels. The second one that was actually quite fun too was The Late Mrs. Willoughby. So again, like these mysteries, she's taken some, you know, creative liberties. Obviously in the real Austen world, these characters didn't know each other. There were independent stories set in sometimes a little bit different times. So she has just brought them all together. But if you like your Austens, you like an Agatha Christie style of writing and like a nice convoluted, complicated mystery, I would check out this series. Okay, the last recommendation that I have is a very unusual category, and I have recently started exploring books in this category, and that is graphic novels. They have been incredible. They've been so fun for me to read, and I found the perfect graphic novel for the season of fall, and that is Ghost Roast. It's by a bunch of authors. It's Chanel Gibbs, Emily Cannon, and Shawnee Gibbs. And this was quite fun to read. So this follows a black teenager. Her name is Chelsea Grant. She, you know, just wants to be a normal teenager. She just wants to fit in. But her dad is like, he owns this like Ghostbusters type of company. It's hilarious. They live in New Orleans. Again, excellent setting for the spooky stuff, especially during this fall time. And he is known as somebody who catches and gets rid of ghosts. So, but not like an exorcist, think like Ghostbusters. And obviously, like all teenagers, she's quite embarrassed of her dad and what he does, but she gets roped into working for him for the summer and to go to this old manor house that seems to be haunted, which, you know, this guy who's inherited it he's getting ready to renovate it so he can use it as a hotel. It's a Victorian mansion, I believe. And that is sort of the setting and the premises, and our main character, Chelsea, she sees ghosts, but it's not a scary graphic novel. It's actually very, very culturally relevant. It's historically relevant in the sense that it talks a lot about the oppressive history in New Orleans and the history of slavery in New Orleans. There's a lot of accountability as well, with some characters being held accountable for that, which I actually really appreciated. So very heartwarming. There's an element of mystery here as well, beautifully illustrated. It was actually a lot of fun to read. If you like your female sleuths and your female leads, you would actually really like this one. So not only can she see ghosts, she also develops a relationship with them, and then now she's working towards saving the afterlife of one of the ghosts, which directly goes against what her father wants for his business. So there's a lot of navigating your own like individuality that she experiences. I thought this was a fun graphic novel. If you're in a reading slump too, I find that graphic novels are such a good way to get out of one. As for what I am reading for fall, I am honestly feeling a little uninspired. I started End of Story by A.J. Finn. She wrote The Woman in the Window, which is one of the thrillers that I really enjoyed. It's a psychological thriller. And End of Story, I'm about 10% through, but I'm not really feeling wowed by it, so I'm feeling a bit uninspired. Let me know if you have any recommendations for me for what to read this fall season. It could be cozy mystery, it could be a psychological thriller, it could be anything else, actually a witchy book maybe. I'm quite open. I am actually planning on reading Payback's a Witch. I forget the name of the author, but that is on my list. Again, not really feeling super called to it right now, but maybe I will. Maybe I will change my mind. Let me know if any of these books spoke to you. What are you reading this fall season? What you think I should be reading this fall season? I will appreciate any help that I can get. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in my next one.